Hello, welcome back. Christopher Taylor with Sovereign Harmony. Good to see you. It's been a couple of months. I am out here in Carlsbad, right on the Carlsbad Oceanside line in Southern California, out in a public place this time. So you might see some kids in the background or something like that going on back there. So I'm just not in a private place today, but that's okay. The weather's still good here. You can see short sleeves. So it's decent. It gets cold at night this time of year, but during the day in the sunshine, it's still pretty nice. But I will be heading to the East Coast in New England, Massachusetts mostly, starting tomorrow, Sunday. I will be flying Sunday the 18th back east, and I won't come back until January 1st, and that's the next time I'll probably do an update here on the year ahead for 2019, right around just after January 1st. But I will touch on today a little bit of an outlook for 2019, especially with some of the recent things that have been going on here astrologically. So today is Saturday, November 17th, 2018. So we're cruising toward the end of 2018 into 2019, and some things that have happened since we talked. In my last video, I went over Venus retrograde, and so I also talked about Jupiter entering Sagittarius. Didn't go too much into that, but we're going to go a little bit more into that now because Jupiter has entered Sagittarius since we last spoke. And the nodes of the moon actually changed signs recently. And so those are the big things to talk about, but also we're in Mercury retrograde right now. So quite a few things going on. Actually, yesterday on the 16th of November, Venus went direct in the morning, and then Mercury went retrograde in the evening. So Venus kind of finished up its retrograde cycle, and then Mercury started its own. Of course, Mercury goes retrograde 3 times a year, so it's not as rare. Venus once every year and a half or so, 18, 19 months or so. So the Venus retrograde is a little bit more rare and more to talk about. But we got Mercury retrograde right now, just went retrograde in Sagittarius. Jupiter just entered Sagittarius, so we have a big Sagittarius theme going on as well. And Venus is now direct in Libra. It'll head back into Scorpio where it went retrograde. So it's going to move through the rest of Scorpio, and it won't exit its shadow till about mid-December. Okay, so it'll be about just before Christmas time is when, actually right around the solstice, just before, I believe, just before the solstice, Venus will exit the shadow of the retrograde that has been going on the last several weeks. Okay. And actually Mercury will exit its shadow around that same time too. So really the rest of the year is kind of finishing up what has been going on here in the last few months, energetically speaking. So with Venus now direct, the last several months has been a time of kind of going over our relationship patterns, going over what we value, and making sure that we are eliminating, putting our focus on things that we don't really value so much, but also kind of fine-tuning our ability to relate to others as a unique sovereign being, rather than as a program, as programmed by our own habits and patterns and things like that, and getting out of that. So it's been a chance to kind of see things more clearly with regards to our relationships, with regards to how we're spending our time to earn money and things like that. So with it now direct in Libra, there's a sense of a new balance in the air, and when it enters Scorpio, we're going to have a little more confidence about kind of what to release, what to get rid of here over the next couple of months. Okay, and with Mercury now retrograde in Sag, what that has to do with here is a reorganization of our belief systems over the next few weeks. It's interesting that it occurs with Thanksgiving right in the middle, so there can be a lot of discussions. It's definitely an energy for discussions, but the kind of discussions that change minds. Okay. And so there can be the potential for preaching one's own beliefs, so that needs to be watched out for. But there's the opportunity with Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius for these discussions to, or I should say, for new information to seep in and change our viewpoints. So we could be helping to change others' viewpoints. They could be helping to change ours. But it is about how we see the big picture, how we, what forms the foundation of our belief systems. These will be up for discussion and shifts over the next several weeks with Mercury retrograde. So it'll go direct, actually, December 6th. So just a little bit into December. So really it's kind of Thanksgiving plus or minus a week and a half or so where this is occurring. So it's a nice opportunity. So if a discussion needs to happen, this is a great time to do it, right? Just being more open and flexible is the key here. And there's, it's like the veil is a little bit thinned in a sense, and information that we might miss could actually be more visible to us, and we might see ourselves having to look at things a little differently if we're enlightened in as much with what we're learning, okay? The other thing I think that I mentioned here was Jupiter entering Sagittarius. So Jupiter takes about a year to run through a sign, and so it entered Scorpio last October 2017, and it just exited Scorpio and entered Sagittarius just recently here. The exact date, I think it was like November 8th. Yeah, on the 8th of November, so a little over a week ago. And so I don't know if you've noticed the shifts or anything like that, but it will be in Sagittarius all the way until December of next year. So for about 13 months or so, we have Jupiter in Sagittarius, solid, not going back to Scorpio or anything like that. And Jupiter rules Sagittarius. So we have Mercury retrograde going on in Sagittarius, then we have Jupiter, which rules Sagittarius, in Sagittarius. And it's an energy that has a lot to do, again, like that expanding the mind, seeing things from the bigger picture, learning, okay? It's a big energy for learning. And, on a personal level, this can, manifest in many different ways, just opening up to new avenues and things like that. But collectively speaking, and that's really what I want to talk about, more importantly, is this energy of knowledge and information getting out to the masses, okay? With Jupiter in Scorpio, it was a time of hidden things being expanded upon, okay? So whispers behind the curtains and things like that. And so there's been a lot of things that have come up with Jupiter and Scorpio. The first thing that I brought up last year when I talked about Jupiter and Scorpio was the Weinstein scandal and the Me Too movement, etc. And so there was, a sense of the secrets in Hollywood coming up to the surface. And also, if you're not familiar with QAnon or Q, this is, it's up anybody's guess exactly who Q is, but Q started around October 2017, right when Jupiter entered Scorpio. And Q is someone that posts and tweets and things that are counter to mainstream knowledge, okay? There's a sense that whoever is doing it, whoever group is doing it, they do have some kind of knowledge that is not being shared with the masses. And so Jupiter in Scorpio is this perfect, I should say it's a perfect reflection of Jupiter in Scorpio, that energy of, secrets coming out. We don't even know who Q is. So there's a sense of secrecy in itself. I think what's going to happen here with Jupiter in Sagittarius, a lot of information has been coming up. A lot of things have been, released, and there's quite, not quite said out loud yet. Things are going to be said out loud, okay? So we're going to start seeing actual, mainstream media outlets that are going to have no choice but to share the truth, okay? The truth that is always kept hidden from us. You can go and do your own research as far as, where the intention to control the masses began and started, etc., the Illuminati, blah, blah, blah. We can go deep dive into that. But at the end of the day, there is actual documentation that clearly states the intention to warp the minds of the masses via media and education for the intention of total control, of the money, of everything else, okay? And so there's a small group of people doing that. If you've ever heard of the Bilderberg Group, 1954 was when they first initiated. They have a document that's actually called the Quiet War, and this is what I'm speaking about. The Quiet War is this war, it's a very slow-paced attack on individuality, creativity, and all the things that most human beings hold high, and it's for the purpose of total control of resources and people, etc. Okay. The good news is there's always been, since the beginning, people opposed to it, and yes, some of those opposed to it have been, basically released from Earth, to say it lightly, but not everyone. And we're getting to a point now, I believe, anyway, that there are more and more people waking up, more and more people not in alignment with what they call the cabal, or whatever you want to call it. Okay, and Trump being one of those potential wild cards that may or may not be tied to it. I haven't drawn any conclusions on that yet, but he's a wild card nonetheless, which is why you can't hear one good thing about him in the media. because the media's job right now is to make sure you look away from the orange man, basically, because there must be some kind of threat there. And some are linking QAnon to Trump and stuff, and I have no idea, couldn't make any conclusions on that either. But point being, Jupiter in Sagittarius is going to be a time of truth, a time of the truth coming out and expanding, and a lot of people having to change their beliefs, because if you believe one thing your whole life, but then the proof comes in your face that it isn't true, you have no choice. And this can cause cognitive dissonance, of course. Cognitive dissonance is when you have, two opposing beliefs simultaneously held in your mind. It can cause some dissension and stress, etc. Because it's about, realizing that maybe, something you've always believed has always been wrong. And it's like, wow, if you based your whole life on something like that, now what, right? But in my opinion, the truth sets us free, and that is the whole point of why hiding information is so imprisoning, so to speak. And that's kind of what we've been in this quiet war, in our own, prisons of our own minds, essentially, that are limited to what information we could be diving into. And we can get into all kinds of technologies that have been hidden, etc., and cures for diseases, and weaponry, weaponry that is used by the military that we're not supposed to know about, etc. And again, I am in Southern California. There's no sign of the fires here whatsoever. I know, the media is full of the fires in California. It is bad where it is bad, for sure, but it's certainly not the whole state, as this attests to. It's a nice day today. No smell of smoke, no sign of fires or anything. That's a good thing. But I brought up the fires just because it's one of the many, question marks about what, the pattern of these burns the last couple of years, going back to Sonoma County last year, and now we have this Paradise, the town of Paradise, burned down to the ground, essentially, in Northern California. And then we have the fires in Thousand Oaks area going to Malibu. There are question marks because the patterns of these fires, they don't look natural. And the things that are burning versus not burning doesn't look natural. In other words, there are trees left standing next to a house that is completely not just burnt, but burnt to the ground, to almost nothing, to ash. And that doesn't make much sense. And for the wildfire, it's the trees that, unwittingly spread their fire to the homes, etc. And everything burns. That's a wildfire. These aren't. And so there may be some truth that that could be coming out about the weaponry potential. If you're not familiar with weapons that are directed energy weapons, DEWs, there are some that believe that these are actually used for weather manipulation, fire starting, etc. And the logic of it makes sense, and the results, what we're seeing, the strangeness of the results, aligns with that logic. But because it's so hard to get a grip on what is actually real and true, we're always left sort of in the dark, in that prison, that quiet war, again, being waged on us. But I think Jupiter and Sagittarius, these kinds of issues, it's going to get more exposure, more spreading, and it's going to be hard for those that are trying to keep the information shut, or keep the lid shut on that information. It's going to be harder and harder for them to do so. So I think this is a positive development, very positive. It's very positive to come to the awareness that you've been under negative influence, because now that's the first step toward freedom. And I feel like that is happening here. Jupiter in Sagittarius is also about that expansion of freedom. Okay, and you can't have the freedom unless you're set free, and you need the truth first. And that's exactly what is the theme of this year coming up. Okay, and so along with that, we had the moon's nodes switch signs. Okay, so the north node has been in Leo for the last year and a half or so, since the spring of 2017, and the south node has been in the opposite sign, Aquarius. And so it's been a time for the last year and a half or so of really focusing on our heart's desire and releasing detachment, releasing kind of our old stories, etc. Okay, and what we're doing now with this shift is we're focusing on a new comfort level with the north node in Cancer, south node in Capricorn. That's the opposite sign of Cancer. We're basically leaving behind old structures of authority Okay, and this is related to what's happening now with the Mercury retrograde in Sag, Jupiter in Sag all year, most of 2019, is this having to adjust where we plant our feet, what we've always rested our feet on, because of new information coming in and a new sense of what we trust and don't trust. Okay, and that's what I feel like this Cancer Capricorn has a lot to do with, is trust. Okay, we're learning how to trust our own senses and release our trust in outside authority. Okay, and that's that Capricorn side of it, releasing the trust in the outside authorities, that especially if you come to find out that you've been lied to by someone you supported, for example. And this, I feel like this will happen on both sides of the political spectrum, but it's the idea of coming to the realization that you really can trust yourself and trust your own unit, your own tribes and families over what is being driven into you. One of the big things from that quiet war, in that document, you can research that yourself, the Bilderberg Group, one of the intentions of this is to break up families for the purpose of getting children under government control earlier, and basically molding society in a way they see fit. And so there have been all kinds of different things happening for the last several decades and if you look around, it's been fairly successful to a certain degree. Okay, and but it's going to be important for us then as a collective to reinstitute that sense of home and family, whether it's blood or not. But the idea of trusting ourselves and putting trust in each other versus higher authority. Okay, each other versus higher authority. So learning how to hear everyone. You don't have to be a professional anything to have an intelligent opinion. Okay, and so our ability to hear everyone while following no one is going to be paramount moving forward, not just this year, but moving forward from this year and beyond. Hear everyone, follow no one. That means be open to anything anyone has to say, because there might be a lot of truth in something. A 4-year-old can have brilliant wisdom, and a decorated laureate scientist can be completely wrong about something. Okay, but if we listen to that scientist, whatever they say is true, because they're a scientist, and what does a 4-year-old know? So we don't listen to what a 4-year-old says. We're missing out on how to discern information for ourselves, and that is the key. Finding new comfort in discerning information as an individual, and being able to take in information from people that we see at our own level, rather than only from a perceived upper level, a person of authority, for example. Okay, this is huge. Like when it comes to what's happening in climate science right now. My background is actually, I went to school, I was a meteorology major. I have a master's in atmospheric science with a focus on climate change. I also have a master's in environmental science and management, and I've worked in that field, etc. I've come to my own awakenings and awarenesses about that whole sector of science. Okay, and now it's amazing how now when I read articles, when I see results of papers and etc., I have a better sense of what's actually going on rather than what's being said. Okay, and that's just part of my own experience, and I think we're all coming to this new awareness. And what I've come to conclude with the whole climate change thing is it is one of the many things on the list of what we're supposed to believe in order to take certain actions, to create policies for controlling resources, etc., taking away freedom again from individuals, and the scare tactics, of doom and gloom, and if we don't do this by this time, this is going to happen. And then you look around and there's storms happening and fires happening, and the first thing they say is climate change, and it's a scapegoat that has no intelligent line of logic to it, but yet people react to it, and you just hear people saying, "Oh, climate change, that's a bad thing," and those fires, yeah, it must be climate change, or all those hurricanes getting strong, that must be climate change, and then that just reinforces the policies that would be used against everyone. Okay, but the idea is the intention is to get our consent as a collective, and what our job is, if our intent is really to be free, to be individuals, and to align with our hearts and do what we love, and be what we love, we have to come together with each other trust each other, hear everyone. Don't put anyone on a pedestal of authority, and that way whatever comes out of their mouth essentially is truth. Know truth when you feel truth. That's the idea. Know truth when you feel truth. And this is going to be a year heading into 2020, really. So 2019 into 2020, a year. This is going to be a time of having to turn, flex these muscles over and over again, because we're going to have authority sources putting things down our throat about what is reality and what's going on, and this is what has to be done. And we have to take it upon ourselves to know when we're being lied to, know when we're being manipulated. And most of that manipulation is emotional manipulation. So you get someone scared, and then you provide a solution to what scares them, or you point your finger at why they should be scared, and then you fix it for them. And that's how this hierarchy works. Okay, so it's up to us to just put our feet in the ground and again start trusting ourselves and others, and look to each other for information rather than to authority sources which have been essentially infiltrated. Okay, so whether it's journals and articles, media, television, whatever, there's an infiltration of information, and a lot of truth is hidden from us. Let's make this year 2019 coming up, and I'll talk more about it in January, but with the energy we have, this is a time to break from that pattern, to break from those old authorities, that South Node in Capricorn, and to come into our own with trusting each other, trusting ourselves, and trusting that your fellow human being may have your best interest in mind as well as theirs, whereas these hierarchical structures, these political pundits, don't have anyone's best interest in mind other than themselves, and that might be the biggest wake up that we have. We just came off an election here last week, and everyone's wearing their I voted stickers, which is essentially saying I consent to being ruled this way, if you can look at it that way, because it doesn't matter which way you voted. The system should be changing according to how we change. We shouldn't have the same system, and there's other ways to elect and to represent ourselves, and to do it in ways that are less corrupt. And so this may be the beginnings of that too. The breakdown of the old political system that allows this hierarchy to operate, and control our minds essentially with just putting information in front of our faces and hiding other information away from it. And this could be the start, I think, in the next several years of the rise of the individual, the rise of the smaller units, sovereign units that govern themselves, etc. Okay, and this is a good thing. It's a good thing. It's actually the results of that kind of approach actually will probably eliminate pollution for the most part. So the whole environmental concern, or one of the big scares is you've got to have big government and UN-like agencies to fix the planet. And the reality is, it's the same entities that have such far-reaching control over the world's resources and the development, etc., that have caused it. And then they're going to show us how they can fix it. Okay. The idea is to take that back, take on our own sovereign responsibility, and when we do that in the smaller units, it's much easier to control things, externalities they call it, like pollution, etc. Okay. Anyway, I'm ranting and raving today. Happy Jupiter and Sagittarius, apparently. But anyway, if you have any questions, let me know. I think this is exciting energy we're in right now. Like I said, I will be on the East Coast, probably wearing a jacket for the next 6 weeks or so, because it is pretty cold over there. But if you have any questions astrologically or any of the stuff I brought up here, feel free to contact me. Get through to me on YouTube. I can respond pretty quickly. Also, I may be doing a different platform, expanding beyond the astrology, still using the astrology, but expanding beyond it to talk about more of the things that I'm mentioning here, whether it's written form, video form, I'm not sure yet, but 2019 I'm going to get my Jupiter and Sagittarius on, I think, and really start talking about these issues and digging into the information, the rationale, the logic So no matter what we're told to believe, we have to dig in to see what is actually there. So anyway, let me know if you have any questions about that. If you want to join in, whatever. My name, Christopher Taylor, Sovereign Harmony. Thanks for joining me, and I will see you at the beginning of 2019. Thanks for watching.